Firstly, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see a full house again. Nice to see everybody in London. It'll be a bit of a sort of all over the place talk because when I came in, Richard said to me, could I demonstrate some of the RISC OS development stuff as well. So you're going to get a big chunk of ArcConf, but you're going to get a splattering of RISC OS developments in so that I can demonstrate some of the stuff that we've been doing over the summer for RISC OS developments as well. It's been quite busy, so if I'm talking gibberish, I apologise. It's been quite a few weeks. We'll start by doing a brief run over the new software releases that we've done for the London Show. Basically, sort of 4 new software releases from RComp and RComp Interactive in time for London. The primary one is a new version of NetFetch, NetFetch 6. And NetFetch 6 is based on, should we say, a greater appreciation that I've had over the 2025 for the changes that are taking place in the internet market and space in terms of how people get set up for email and news, and the changes that are happening with internet providers in terms of authentication, SSL, TLS, and all the latest standards of encryption that goes with it. Even Acorn-friendly ISPs like Orpheus over the summer have introduced more security. And what I realised was that new users were coming on board with NetFetch, but they were having quite a tough time actually dealing with it, because when we first set up NetFetch and its configuration screens 15, 20 years ago, the internet was a very different place. So what we've done is to revamp both for sort of existing customers and for first-time setup. We've completely revamped the user interface and the functionality of NetFetch's email and news capabilities. So the focus during the first-time setup is on configuring your email services with NetFetch and being able to do straight away password protected SMTP without going deep into the delves of the software, and also options for SSL, TLS. As I say, we support the latest TLS 1.3 standard in NetFetch 6, and so we look at running what I believe to be a clean copy. And we go to manual configuration, as most people will see. We used to focus on things like having news groups set up right from the beginning, but since most internet providers no longer offer news services, and those that do often require usernames, passwords, SSL, we focus news from the initial setup of NetFetch so that we can focus on the email side of things. So you can see that we have the usual POP setup, SMTP setup. You can tick to password to send mail, and if you want to do SSL, you've got a button to take to the SSL features. We've defocused, just cancel that, we're not going to go for a whole setup. We've defocused news from the beginning, but what we have introduced in version 6 in the revamped mailing news window is the free news wizard. And this basically takes you through getting set up with totally free access to news groups, so that all the sort of Acorn news groups that exist, like Comsys Acorn Announce, which are now quite difficult to get hold of because Google has stopped archiving them. They're still used by companies for announcing, every RISC OS release tends to be announced on the Acorn news groups. A lot of people can't access them. So what this does is provide you with a sort of wizard to get set up with that. You just click the link in the middle of the window, you get your username and password, you type that into the box, you click use those details, and it sets you all up. So regardless of which internet provider, you just go through that wizard and you'll have a new setup in sort of 5 minutes for free. And it sorts out all the SSL, TLS, and it sorts out the usernames and passwords for you. So it all just works, and it means that rather than relying on internet providers to provide the news features that used to be common 20 years ago, now your likes of BT or Sky or whatever, they don't provide you with news groups. So, as I say, we've defocused that from the initial setup and made it possible just to click the button to do the full new setup within NetFetch at a later date. And we've coupled that, as I say, with the latest security standards, which make sure that we can connect to more modern servers and just keep everything up to date on that regard. And would you believe it's 6 years since the last NetFetch chargeable upgrade was back in 2019? It was the Wakefield Show 2019, I found out when I sort of looked back through the archives. So, been quite a while. So basically we decided that it was time to do, or because of all these changes that I was making as a result of what I was seeing over the summer, we decided that it was time to do NetFetch 6. And that's what we've got here. So we have the upgrades available at the show. The upgrade from version 5 is £20, and you also get some of the later bits that we added to 5 family, like the quick fetching stuff, which appears when you've got mailboxes set up and configured, and obviously the anti-spam stuff. You've got various things for handling your identification online for mail facilities, proving you are who you say you are, and also proving the server is who the server says it is, to ensure that all the sort of things like SPF, DMARC and things all work smoothly with RISC OS and your RISC OS email. And NetFetch works with both Messenger Pro and Pluto. It includes a version of Messenger Pro if you don't have any RISC OS email software, but we don't ram it down your throat. You can use whatever you like with it. So, yeah, NetFetch 6. We've also done new versions of Fireworks Pro and Photodesk. The new Fireworks Pro is faster at loading and saving documents, especially if you're using sort of Raspberry Pi with an SD card. You'll notice quite a substantial improvement to file loading and saving, especially with bigger files. It also uses outline fonts for areas that would have previously used system font, and it now has a variety of fonts which are included that it can use for that. So if I go to Fireworks, you can see the spreadsheet, type it here, and I've got some machines set up, so it's making me look stupid. Here's the latest version. What have I not done? Not merged in fonts. What it is about demos in me, but I always seem to I've got Bill Gates' curse of demos. Okay. So I don't know what you can see, but now rather than the system font, we have an outline font being used wherever the system font would be, which is much more pleasant on the eye. And clearer when you're editing formulas on the formula bar, because the system font isn't always the clearest. There are some other sort of bug fixes and things. It no longer leaves an hourglass at the end when you hit it, which was a bug in the last version, so that's been fixed. And various things to do with different coloured sprites being displayed correctly, various bits and pieces. So yeah, it's a free update for existing users for Fireworks, but we do, so a bit of a stocking stuffer, have some Fireworks Pro CDs on the stand, which you can pick up for, well, I need to check the prices, but it's, I think it's £5, but it's certainly under a tenner. So the idea is that will give you the, all the latest stuff on CD, or you can have it on a USB stick if you bought a USB stick. And that gives you actually a bit more stuff. There are more fonts, there's more user guides. There's plenty of user guides to start with, but there's more support materials, more. Basically, the luxury of a big disk is that we can provide you with sort of quite a lot more than we can in some more compact download edition. So yeah, so that's Fireworks Pro, and just a small update to Photodesk just to keep switching over. We found that we did a massive photo desk update in March for the Warrington show. That had sort of ginormous multi-screen number of changes. We were approaching 100 changes, if I recall correctly, but don't quote me on that. So it's quite a big update in March. Of course, whenever you do such a big update, a few other things come through, and people reported that a couple of options got swapped around, and another option was generating an error when you clicked it. So we're just trying to look and fix bugs and stuff. So again, new photo desk, free of charge to anybody who bought photo desk, the X80 edition of photo desk from, I think we launched that probably about 5 years ago now. So that's free to anybody who purchased that edition. As long as you sort of want the new modern version, you can download that on Play Store. And again, similarly like the photo desk, like the fireworks, we have a new CD or USB stick version with all the extra goodies. We've got some extra software. The CD edition, again, we filled it up with goodies and so for very low cost you can get the stocking stuffer again for the latest photo desk. But otherwise, as I say, free download if you just want to grab the latest version. The final software thing I want to talk about relates to the latest release of our NVMe drivers that came out over the summer. I've talked many times now, I won't go into too much boring detail this time, about our NVMe project for high-speed storage on RISC OS, and how we've developed a whole new 64-bit based architecture for drives, allowing for very large drives. Essentially, the sky's the limit on drive capacity that you can use. RISC OS itself does impose some limits that we have to adhere to, but the actual drives themselves can be any size because of the 64-bit architecture that we've provided. So you could start shoving an 8 terabyte drive. You'd have to split it up into 4 2 terabyte lumps, but you can use the 4 terabytes available. And with the software, summer release, we've introduced the new NVMe tools software, which comes as part of the driver set. And what this does is provide tools for managing your NVMe storage device, and basically we've got block device info, which gives us rather dry documentation about what's present. It tells us that we've got, at the top here we can see that we've got a Sabre and Rocket NVMe drive. I've gone with the 500 gig because of cost effectiveness, but that could be a 4 or 8 terabyte version if we really wanted. And we can see that that's got 2 partitions on it. One of the features of our NVMe driver, and more specifically of the block devices architecture that we've designed system-wide, is that we have an understanding of modern partition tables. So GPT is what the rest of the world uses for modern partition disks. 64-bit world of large disks, everything is GPT. And it can automatically, for any block device's filing system, can automatically handle the GPT partitions and see what's on the disk. And it's seen that there are 2 partitions on this disk. As it happens, we formatted both of them to RISC OS. Basically, for each one it detects that we put an icon on the icon bar. You can also tell it not to put icons on the bar for filing systems that are not recognised. So if you've got like an X4 Linux partition that you don't want to see on the icon bar, you can tell it to ignore those. But it will obviously put up, not obviously, but it will do icons. So, you might well want to have like FAT32 and Acorn RISC OS format partitions that appear on the icon bar, and then you can format them up to see fit. And this is telling us about all of those. The big feature is smart status. This is a feature that is common to most NVMe drives, and is built-in health monitoring of your storage device. It's the first time that I'm aware of this might have been possible on RISC OS. But it's pretty important because it gives you an idea on an understanding of how the drive is being used, and warns you of any potential problems. If the drive is overheating, the drive is using up its spare space too quickly, if it's got warning, it records warnings. If it's failing to write data blocks, things like that, will all be stored in the smart information. And we can read that. And you can see that it's color-coded at the top right. You can see that the drive health is, on this drive, is healthy as I would hope, because it's a relatively new drive, bought over the summer. 100% life remaining, as you would probably expect. And it's currently running at 37 degrees Celsius. That was quite fun, because initially the drive's actually reporting Kelvin. So we were wondering why they were running at 370 degrees. When we first got it, so we didn't realise that it was in Kelvin. Well, 310 actually. So we've automatically translated that down into Celsius for people, because temperatures in Kelvin, not most people's first-hand measurements. I'm sure the scientists sometimes would gravitate towards it, but for most of us, 37 Celsius is a lot more understandable than. I did wonder about doing an auto-translate to Fahrenheit as well, but.
Well, if you've got any American customers, they want Fahrenheit, wouldn't they?
Well, that's it. I think I'm more inclined to make them use for Celsius, just to give them some good practice for the rest of global citizenship and all that. You can see in the more detailed information, it tells us how many obviously we've had 56 hours of uptime. You tend to see quite a few unsafe shutdowns, I think, because basically if you do a control break on RISC OS, that's considered an unsafe shutdown, even though actually the driver's part of that. So so you take that with a big dollop of salt. There's like updates live, and you can see the information there. You can also tie it to the filing system so that you actually can bring it up straight from the icon. So that's pretty cool. The tools also provide formatting tools. We've got the classic formatter H4 for sort of traditional smaller disks. To take advantage of the large capacity, we've got two tools on the bottom here. Convert to 4K-N or convert an NVMe drive. They're usually supplied in what's called 512E format, which is basically, although the actual flash on the drives comes in 4K blocks, they fake 512 byte sectors for compatibility with DOS and legacy operating systems. 4KN is basically the 4K blocks are then presented as whole 4K blocks, and because this results in smaller numbers, because instead of large numbers of 512, you end up with smaller numbers, 8 times smaller of 4K rather than 512. So that's good for RISC OS, because RISC OS has 32-bit, well actually in this case 28-bit limitations on sizes of drive, so being able to use 4K lumps is both more efficient and also, which makes it faster, but also allows us to use much larger drives within the limitations of RISC OS. Now you say, Andrew, but you said it was all 64-bit. Block devices architecture, the NVMe driver is all 64-bit friendly. The actual RISC OS file core filing system that we all use has these limitations baked into it. Now, if we're using a different disk format, then obviously the sky's the limit. But whilst everyone was sticking to the sort of classic Acorn formats, then you need lumps of, well, if you're using 4KN, you can get lumps of 2 terabytes, hence 4 partitions, 8 terabytes of storage. So you can convert between the two formats using the Convert 4KN tool. It tells us, you click on it, it tells you that this particular drive, I'm actually running it as a 512 just because that's how it shipped. Don't be particularly fancy with it. But you can actually see that it tells us this drive supports both 512 and 4K sectors. When it's marked one is good and the other is better. And we can simply type in the size we want and it will convert it. When we do so, we will use our data, so I'm not going to do that now. Once we've done that, we can click the 4K formatter, which will automatically sort out the sizes, and we can just choose your drive, put in the disk name, and click format. And Bob's your uncle, your format disk. This is important because for 4K formatting you need a separate tool rather than the old H-form software. So that's a separate tool to do it, or with the NVMe tool software. And that's all free to download for our users. The NVMe software, by the way, is supplied free of charge. Our only requirement, which is really from a support perspective, is that we ask that people buy at least something NVMe related. It could just be like a USB adapter or something from us to get the free drivers. The reason for that, ideally I'd like you to buy like an NVMe drive from us, because that way I can supply you with a pre-formatted, ready to go drive that I know will work a treat. The NVMe drivers work with a lot of drives, but if you look at if you're using them with a Pi, for example, the Pi compatibility list for NVMe drives is not as great as, it's far from perfect. So it's very easy to go out and buy one that just literally does not work with a Raspberry Pi. And by buying the drive from us at the same time, it means that it cuts down my technical support that I have to do, and just give you the drive and let you get on with it. So you get a drive that is known good, ready to format, you plug it in, use it, off you go, and the drivers just come along for free with it. As I say, it keeps the support manageable, because then we don't get people saying, oh, I bought this NVMe drive, why doesn't it work with your drivers? And we have to say, well, actually, you could put that into a Pi 5 and it just wouldn't work because the Pi 5, that drive is not Pi compatible. Some of the high-end Western digitals, for example, just do not work. At the lower end, I've seen drives where they're sometimes recognised by the Pi firmware, sometimes they're not. You just get nothing in PCI. Go to the PCI bus and there's literally nothing there, but then you reboot and it will appear. And stuff like that, you just avoid incompatible drives. They're not, as I say, nothing to do with our drive, they're just that the Pi can't see it, then we can't talk to it. Simple as that. The drivers work on Pi Pro and obviously all our machines and any compute module for systems. Right, that's software done. I'm running today on one of our Hydra machines. This is one of our premium machines. The Hydra, for those aren't immediately familiar with it, basically one computer with up to 6 processors inside it. Typically we would buy it with 2 heads, one RISC OS, one Linux, so you might have compute module 4 RISC OS system, and simultaneously a Pi 5 Linux system running simultaneously in the same box at the same time, sharing files between them seamlessly. You can have more. This one's got. Yeah. So you can have. I've got 3 heads in this one. One acts as a file server. It's a Pi 4 file server. One is a Pi 5 for application, the one that you use day to day, and obviously Pi 4 for RISC OS. If I hold it up, you can see each one has its own NVMe drive. You can see there's the same one that we were looking at in the tools. And I can just simply, there is the Linux desktop running in a window on the desktop. So you can run programs like Chrome, LibreOffice, you name it, in a window on the desktop. It's currently set up for 1080p, so I'm running at a lower resolution for the projector, so if it looks a bit wonky, that's why. But while I'm here, Richard has asked me to show you RISC OS Direct for Pi 5, which I have. This is my development machine. This is where I did all the work to use the direct version for Pi 5, which is based on the excellent work by Tim Baldwin and John Ritz. So basically, you download it as a special tar-zip. Do follow the instructions on which it gets the upgrade live. It's important that you unzip it in the right way. It'll tell you how. If you don't do that, you won't get the right RISC OS file type. So it is important to follow the instructions word for word. But once you've unpacked it, you just click the Enter RISC OS icon, and boom, there you are running RISC OS on Pi 5. So we have a little bit of an inception thing going here, because we have a RISC OS compute module 4 running in the background, running RISC OS, and then we have that connecting to a Pi 5 running Linux, running RISC OS in a window on your desktop. Please forgive the times being long because I haven't connected into the internet today. So basically, RISC OS Direct for Pi 5. It's still a little bit beta, I'm afraid. The idea was that Pi 5 has become ubiquitous in the real world in a way that Pi 4 is now considered passé, and the fact that we can't run RISC OS on Pi 5 is a little bit embarrassing when we're trying to evangelize RISC OS. So the idea is at least we can offer something to somebody who runs Linux. They can download it, they can try RISC OS on their Pi 5, they can see this thing exists. Now, if they then choose to, and they like RISC OS, then they can go and buy a Pi 4 stick RISC OS and run the full RISC OS experience. But the point is, they're not left with this idea that it's a legacy operating system, doesn't even work on my Pi 5. They can try it, they can see it, and you've got programs like Foundation Pro, network programs like NetSurf and things work. You can network with London 98, so on. And FinStore works. Vast majority of things work. Basically, there's no sound and there's no VFP floating point. So that means no iris and limited gains because a lot of them want to do sound-related things and therefore won't work. But even then, some of the games do work. And then you go to the hard disk and you go to diversions, and you go to something like, Overlord is one of Hancock's games, and let's drop back to a window because we're in a low resolution, but you can see, broadly speaking, as Hancock game running quite happily within RISC OS Direct. Now what this is effectively doing is running natively in user space for 32-bit code. So essentially RISC OS consists of core bits that run in what we call supervisor mode, and they cannot work on Pi 5 because Pi 5 is a 64-bit for supervisor access. But Pi 5 does have a 32-bit for user mode code, which is to applications and things like that. So I'm simplifying it as best I can. So basically what this means is you get native performance from most things. So if you run like a basic program, for example, it will run about twice as fast as the one Pi 4. So this isn't emulation in the classic sense of emulation. But what it will do is kick into emulation for things that it literally cannot do any other way. So basically, if it needs to drop into the supervisor stuff, it will do so under emulation, but everything else is running natively on the processor. So it's giving you basically as close to native as we can get, and that does mean give you the performance benefits that you would expect from a Pi 5 for many things. And if you've got some number crunching to do on RISC OS, then doing it under this will give you noticeable speed improvements over doing it on a Pi 4. What we've done.
Run RISC OS.
I believe it will run RISC OS. I haven't tried because it wasn't such a RISC OS Direct.
Okay. In user space, that would be.
Yeah, I mean most applications work. I've literally the only things I've had to cut out most were some of the games, some of the audio related stuff. Mostly Iris because of the floating point. And some of the emulators I had to cut because they were doing funny things with screen modes and sound. So they were a double whammy. One of them did work. I think the BBC emulator did work, but I decided that leaving bits of it present was a bit too. It was better to do an act on all of it and then introduce it later when things are working better. So I cut the emulators for now on this one. As far as RISC OS is concerned, it should be fine. I don't know if it does any floating point stuff, but I think it works back to a RISC PC or something like that. So if it works back on a RISC PC, then, you know, it's not going to have any code paths that won't work on RISC OS direct line. So I would expect that to work just fine. And as I say, you can use Landman 98 or something to access your NAS or bring in the software. And because it doesn't require you to burn a whole new SD card, you just download it, stick it on top of your existing Pi. It's also more accessible for people who are running Linux already on their Raspberry Pi. They can just literally download it, run it, rather than having to go out and burn an SD card and swap the Linux SD card and put it into RISC OS, which is more faff, and generally the more faff something is, the less likely people are to do it. So again, for lots of reasons, we felt it was a healthy thing to do for what we want to do with RISC OS development, that is making RISC OS more accessible, more available, and presenting RISC OS in the best possible way that we can. So, and that's really where the RISC OS Direct element comes in, that you could just download Tim's base version with Jenkins' scripts and things and do it yourself, and that's absolutely fine. You know, that's what I did initially. But what I realised is that only gives you literally a bare hard disk 4, and you can't do a lot with that. You couldn't get the network didn't work, screen modes were all wonky. It wasn't what I would call usable. And so what we wanted to do with the RISC OS Direct version is much like what RISC OS Direct is compared to the base rule version. We just wanted to elaborate on the excellent work that had already been done to deliver something that was just that bit more ready to go, both in terms of software and something like the working networking, being able to use Landman 98 just out of the box on it to access your shared drives, and just try and give it that extra layer of polish that we've tried to do with the RISC OS Direct project as a whole. So, yeah, I'm going to shut that down now, and we're back to our Linux desktop on our Hydra. I'm going to skip over a lot of our other hardware machines. You've got things like standard Next machine, which is like a Hydra but with just one processor. You've got the Mini Pi, which is a little tiny box with all the features of the Next machine, but in just a tiny box, but with only 2 USBs because tiny box and all that. But that represents really good value if you're just wanting to dip your toe in the water. And then we've got various laptops. This summer has been popular because of Windows 11. We've had a big uptick on RISC books and RISC cubes, which are our hybrid RISC OS Windows machines. And what's been particularly popular are the 18-inch ones that we've been doing this summer, which they don't use the standard 16:9 screen, but rather the 16:10 screen, so you get more vertical space, which is really good for documents. And those are proving really popular. There's a lot of power in there. You've got 8-core 16-thread processor, lots of RAM, NVMe storage, high-speed USB ports, you name it, backlit keyboard, lovely laptops. We've done quite a few of those this summer, so I've brought one of those on the stand to show people. If you're interested, check that out. It gives you the best of Windows and RISC OS with the latest Windows 11 as the back end, tightened. So a lot of the sort of advertising and Microsoft account nonsense pared back, so that you get a much better experience on the Windows side and the RISC OS as well, and then the whole lot blended together so that you can copy and paste between and all that kind of lovely jubbly stuff. I think the final bit, because I know I'm probably running out of time, the final bit I want to talk about is our Pi server range, which we can do in widely variable numbers of disks, but fundamentally you have Pi 5 compute module with a series of NVMe storage drives as a shared system that can be used like a Hydra, but in a standalone form. So you can connect it to the monitor, use it as a Pi 5, And what we do is we set these up for file sharing, for remote access, RAID, for storage, essentially like a mini NAS. Basically the sky's the limit with these things. So you can go the cheap route, just have like one drive on 5, 2 drives on a basic unit. But then, you know, you've got more exciting ones. This is probably the most exciting one. You maybe should come and have a little look. What we have here is an 8-way unit. You've got your Pi 5 compute module there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 NVMe drives. And you can fill them up as you go, so you don't need to spend, you know, a frightening amount on 8 NVMe drives up front. But what you could do is maybe buy a couple of 1 terabyte, a couple of 2 terabyte drives, maybe even 3. 3 is quite good for this kind of RAID setup because you get the storage capacity of 2 with more redundant. So, you know, if you buy 3 drives, you buy 3 1 terabytes, you'll get 2 usable storage, 1 widely redundant cover. If you buy 2 disks, then you get just 2 1 terabytes, you just get 1 terabyte of storage and 1 terabyte of redundancy. So buying 3 can make sense. The point is you can buy a few and then add a few and add a few more and basically keep going. So and what's so good is that, you know, if you were to buy that as like a NAS kit from somebody like QNAP, an 8-way QNAP NAS is like £1,000 just for the NAS. It's frightfully expensive. We do these as kits that sort of start, you know, the 8-way one's £150. So, you know, that's a massive cost saving. If 8-way sounds too much, then this one is a 3/4-way unit, and that guy is £100. So, you know, you'd add your drives on top, and you'd add your compute module, etc., whatever functionality you wanted, but fundamentally you're looking at a lot cheaper, high speed, and this one is crazy. You know, you've got 2.5 gig Ethernet on here, so you know, most people are using like 1 gigabit Ethernet in their home networks, or maybe even slower than that. You've got 2.5 gig Ethernet on here, 3 capability on that unit, you know, HDMI graphics, etc. So, you know, full set of modern features, but at a very cost-effective price. And with NVMe storage, it's silent, no moving parts, and much lower power as well. So you, Richard was telling me that, you know, he's moved some of his servers over to this kind of setup. Not literally this one, but you know, this kind of thing. And he's dropped from sort of 1.5 kilowatts, I think he said, of the power that he was using, down to about sort of 100 to 150 watts. It's a massive power saving when you consider what electricity costs these days. So, you know, it's all round wind. And what you can do with these is administer them from RISC OS, which is pretty cool. I've actually set up one of the heads in the Hydra for demonstration purposes of this. So if I run the RISC web browser on RISC OS, I'll be honest, it's faster if you do this through a Windows web browser, but just get time to do it on RISC OS. We can actually admin the head directly from RISC OS. So now set the thing, and then we log in. Second for it to interrogate it for what state it's in. But we can see there, right now it's using just a couple of percent of the CPU time, memory, look at the storage. And we can sort of see graphs and things on the right hand side. We can see this one's got an SK Hynix 256 gig drive in it just for demonstration purposes. We can set up RAID on RAIDs by clicking on the devices and click create RAID device. obviously on this machine I've just got the one drive connected, so it doesn't really make any sense. But if you have more drives connected, you'll be able to set up the railway from within your RISC OS web browser. We can file share to it, so it's set up to do to share disk access. Just essentially, it's just like having the extra Hydra heads, but in a separate device with even more flexibility on configuration and specifications. So, yeah. Overall, what we've tried to do is make it as RISC OS friendly as possible, easy access through both the remote console, and you can also go into it like I showed how you went into the head on the Hydra. The same thing is possible with these as well, so it uses effectively the same disk image as the Hydra. Yeah, pretty cool. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stop there. I've talked an awful lot about an awful lot of things. I've probably got head spinning and things. So, yeah, obviously talk to me on the stand is probably the best thing to do, so it's kind of more quiet and sensible and orchestrated conversation, and you can actually see things that matter to you. But hopefully I've given you a little bit of a teaser of some of the fun things that we've been doing at Archon Towers, with a little bit of RISC OS development hat on as well. Go get your Iris, by the way. If Richard hasn't handed it home, Iris on Pac-Man, grab it, enjoy it, free of charge for absolutely everybody. Yeah, I've got 1 minute left, so any questions?
The new NetFetch, it still uses Newshound and Hermes for the transport, doesn't it?
Correct.
And can you just drop it over the old one? Or
Yeah,
is it
basically there's a
complete
folder called V4 and V5, and you go into that and just literally the version that's in there, you copy on top.
Right.
And that, there's essentially 3 ways you can do it. You've got a whole fresh copy, you've got the V4 and V5, which is basically for users of any version 4 or version 5 edition, which is what you'll go and do and just drag and drop it. And then for anybody else who's using a really old version, there's a tool we provide called NFUPG. You can use that with your version, you don't need to. And NFUPG just migrates settings across at the same time from all editions. So, if you're using NetFetch 102 or something, then the settings files change wildly, so it will auto convert all of those. But if you're using version 4 on, just do the drag and drop update, and then away you go. Yep. Hopefully I'll be able to do another 6 years. I won't promise it, but on NetFetch 6.
Thank you. Just a very good